Many physicists believe that perhaps pure unlimited love is the ultimate reality of the universe. The world we live in is much more a stream of energy than something like a British landscape. If you move in that direction, it makes sense to think about an energy of love as ultimate. There's so much confrontation in the world, and we just need to get away from that. People are primed for confrontation. They should be primed for carefrontation.
The world, it can feel really impersonal and cold, and if people just can come from that compassionate place, that place of care, the whole energy of this planet would change.
When I see somebody who is getting in an altercation, I can walk up to them. I say, "Do you know that you are a miracle of the universe?" And they're completely shocked. And then I say, "You are a wonder of creation." It's so astonishing for them that they'll actually pause and we can have a conversation.
Hello and welcome. I'm Seline Shenoy, and this is the Dreamcatcher Podcast, a space for thoughtful, unhurried conversations about how we live and what truly matters. I am really glad you're here.
So many of us are searching for peace, but only feel it when life is going well. And when stress hits, relationships feel heavy, or uncertainty takes over, that calm disappears. And we're right back in survival mode. Today's guest is Dr. Stephen G. Post, a researcher, scholar, and one of the leading voices in the science of altruism, compassion, and well-being, and the author of Pure Unlimited Love, Science and the 7 Paths to Inner Peace. In Pure Unlimited Love, Dr. Post explores love not just as an emotion, but as a practice, offering 7 grounded paths that help you cultivate inner peace through compassion, purpose, nature, and the healing power of giving. If you've ever felt emotionally exhausted, disconnected from yourself, or like you're craving a steadier way to live from the inside out, I think this conversation will meet you exactly where you are. Hello, Dr. Stephen. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us. How are you doing today?
Very well, Celine. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here. I'm especially excited for this conversation because your work brings together something I deeply resonate with, and that is the intersection of real science rigor alongside spiritual depth without making it feel abstract or esoteric or something that cannot really be applied in everyday life. And yeah, so I think it's going to be a very interesting and enlightening discussion.
I'm sure it will be, and I look forward to hearing your wonderful and intriguing questions.
Great, thanks. Dr. Stephen, I'd like to start from the beginning of your journey. What first drew you to the study of unlimited love? And what did science reveal that surprised you about it?
Well, many physicists believe that perhaps pure unlimited love is the ultimate reality of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
From its beginnings, if you can even think about beginnings, because time and place are not really on the table yet. But if you speak with quantum physicists who will tell you about little bits of particles flickering in and out of existence in a small fragment of a second, the world we live in is much more a stream of energy than something like a British landscape. And if you move in that direction, it makes sense to think about an energy of love as ultimate. And so I worked a lot with an investor named John Templeton, who started the Templeton Funds.
Mm-hmm.
And he was dying. This was in the summer of 2008. He was in Lyford Key in Nassau, and his son Jack, who was a trauma surgeon, called me on my flip phone and said, Dad is dying. I said, Jack, I'm very sorry to hear that. Is there anything I can do? And then Jack said, yes, in fact, Dad has something he'd like to invite you to work on,
Mhm.
which is the book that he won't have time to write himself. Kind of a daunting request. And I said, did he give you a title? And Jack said, yes, Ultimate Reality is Unlimited Love.
Mhm.
And something that, Schrodinger and a whole number of very prominent people in the 20th century have suggested anyway as plausible, not necessarily proven, certainly, but someday it may be proven. And so I had some doubts because I was at Case Medical School and doing a lot of sciencey stuff. So I said, Jack, could you go back to your dad's bed and ask him if he could allow us to use a question mark at the title? And so that's what happened. Jack came back a couple of minutes later and he said, yeah, Dad says it's okay. Is ultimate reality unlimited love? Question mark. And I felt a lot better because it took some of the pressure off me. Um, and so I wrote that book for the Templeton Press. And it was a collection really of Sir John's deepest thinking because he was a mystic. They called him the Tennessee Mystic, and he also loved physics and science and mathematics. So he believed in the ultimate nature of love as an energy, and he hoped that eventually people would really fine tune their understanding of it. That was Sir John, so he was a big influence on me.
Hmm. So you stumbled upon that opportunity.
Well, it found me. I mean, I'd known Sir John since about, oh goodness, 1990.
Mhm.
We met at a meeting in Northern Virginia. It was a meeting on spirituality and health, which he was supporting. And one of my friends, a psychiatrist named David Larson, said, you should go over to that table and sit down with Sir John and introduce yourself, which I did. And we spoke for about 2 hours about the nature of pure unlimited love and what that means and why it's important. And it was a beautiful conversation. So that began to create a relationship that we shared happily for many, many years. And in fact, in the year 2000, actually, Sir John faxed me. He didn't like email. It was kind of too much for him. He was an older guy, and
Mhm.
it was something that he just didn't think he needed. But he loved fax machines. He thought fax machines were the absolute epitome of human ingenuity. So he could fax, and sometimes he
Yeah.
could fax 4 or 5 important documents a day, and I would read them and try to get back. So one day I was sitting in my office in the medical school at Case. It was just in Cleveland, Ohio, and I received a fax from Sir John. And it said, Stephen, we need to start an institute to study with the best methods of science that we have the most important question in the universe. Uh, what is the nature of ultimate reality and unlimited love? So I wasn't sure quite how to respond because that's a big mouthful.
Yeah.
And I and I responded by fax. Sir John, maybe we should call it the Institute for Creative Altruism, just because altruism is a little more acceptable in social
Yeah.
scientific and genetic circles. And I was a little worried about my credibility. And Sir John faxed back very quickly. He said, no, I think pure unlimited love up to $8.9 million. And
Mhm.
it didn't take very long for me to fax back, Sir John. I love that title. It jumps right off the page. But I've been studying the theme of love. I went to the University of Chicago and studied psychology, but also world religions in the divinity school.
Yeah. I was
Uh,
going to ask if you had any interest or curiosity about spirituality because you did go to medical school, and usually people in the field of science don't really embrace those kind of topics.
yeah, well, even since I was a boy, I went to a high school in New Hampshire called St. Paul's, and that was truly a cold winter, by the way. But I even then was writing and thinking about love in the context of the scriptures of the world.
Mm.
And people describe me, they still do, as peripatetic, which is Aristotle's word for somebody who sort of wanders around with an open book.
Interesting. Peripathetic.
Peripatetic, pathetic,
Pathetic.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little different.
All
And and
right.
and and it was good. And I even had a dream when I was 15 that was love related and that shaped the rest of my life. So I'd been working on this topic and thinking about it and trying
Yeah.
to live it as best I could. We're all flawed over
Yeah.
many, many years. And I wrote my dissertation at the U of Chicago on love and self-denial, looking at all the spiritual traditions,
Hmm.
and I've had a lot of fortune in encountering great, great scholars who have contributed immensely to my thinking and to my life.
Thanks for sharing that. And I love that you didn't arrive at this from theory alone. It feels like it's something that's deeply lived. And that takes us right into the heart of your book. Um, when you say pure unlimited love, what do you mean exactly? And how is it different from how most people think about love?
Well, there are different levels. Some people think about love in terms of uh, chocolate and designer jeans, but we're not talking about it at that level. We're talking about it, initially as at an ethical level, so that all people, without exception, are included in a shared humanity, and
Hmm.
we have a commitment to develop toward all people, not just the nearest and the dearest, although the near and the dear are given to us in life. They're part of our world, and we have special relationships with them that we need to be reliable about. But I have I've been married 43 years and I have two kids who I think are older than you.
Hmm.
Uh, but they're doing well, and we tried to raise kind children.
Okay.
We were intentional about it and thought that through. That's why there's a chapter in the book, May You Raise Kind Children. Because if
Yeah,
we could
I
do that,
saw that. Yeah.
a
So
lot of the,
important. So
yeah,
important.
a lot of the bad stuff in the world would go away if we could figure that one out. I mean, if you're going to bring children into the world, hopefully they can be loving, not just for the near and the dear, but for a shared or a common humanity. So that's always been my aspiration. And I wrote about that I graduated from the University of Chicago with a PhD in about 1983 when I think back to it.
The
And
year
I
I was
also,
born.
yeah, there you go. All right, good. So the year my daughter was born, and
Okay.
and I also did a lot in the psychology department with a fellow named Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi,
Oh, the guy who
wrote Flow.
wrote Flow, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was doing the study on flow. He
Mm.
was much more mystical than people understood. He would often teach courses collaboratively with the divinity school because he thought that the state of flow, when you get totally immersed in the love of your activity, whether it's music or art or Virginia Woolf writing A Room of One's Own or a poet, uh, when you get fully immersed, and that can happen in many, many ways, um, you would lose a sense of time and place. You could feel like you're anywhere in a sense.
Hmm.
And it's very mystical. Many great creative individuals who I talk about in the book had that underlying mystical attitude toward life. So creativity and flow that was Csikszentmihalyi. So I spent some time in psychology and some time in world religions with
Hmm.
people like Mircea Eliade and Joseph Campbell and all sorts of very notable people.
Yeah.
Uh, and that made me happy. And then I was able to, I earlier on I taught in immunology and endocrinology, but I had dropped that and I'd gone to Chicago, leaving the University of Pennsylvania in the dust, although it's a great place. Um, but then they sort of learned that I knew a little bit about basic science, and I was recruited to teach in the Pritzker School of Medicine in Chicago in a
Hmm.
course on medicine and society, which I did and enjoyed. And that became very important in my life journey too, because I've always, for the last 40 years, taught in medical schools, not
Yeah.
just bioethics, because that's quandryism. It's how you take a philosophical
Hmm.
system and apply it to a question. Do
Yeah.
you want to use a feeding pig in a guy who's 92 years old and
Hmm.
dying with terminal dementia? Probably not. But that's just an element of what we do. So we're the Center for Medical Humanities, Compassionate Care, and
Hmm.
Bioethics. So we're really interested in how do you train young medical students and clinicians in empathy, kindness, and compassion, which are just each is a little different than the other. And we've won all kinds of awards nationally for that, and our students really take to it. So it's important because in this world, technology is so powerful,
Yeah.
but the patients, they really want your heart, and you have to be able to give it appropriately and, with some measure, but you need to learn how to be able to respond and let people feel that you're empathic and compassionate, not just in your language, not just cognitively speaking, but really affectively from the heart. Otherwise, they will feel somehow less than fully cared for.
Mm. S-
So
Yeah.
that's what we do. And this is so the institute, I have an institute that Sir
Yeah.
John funded, the Institute for Research on Unlimited Love.
Yeah.
And we've supported, you know, not quite 100 studies around the world on the nature of ultimate reality and love, from physicists to neurologists to theologians.
Hmm.
We've had large conferences around the country. We're having a conference in June at Oxford at Linacre College called The Love of Nature and the Nature of Love. Because, there's a chapter in the book, May you cherish the gift of nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, the young people today are so locked into the technology that they forget how important it is to just get out into nature. That
Absolutely.
frees them from so much negative energy, so much anxiety, so much confusion. When they get out into nature, that's why in every religious tradition imaginable, there are individuals who really just had to step aside
Hmm.
and go out into the natural world and find their souls.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's become increasingly more important for them to have those kind of spaces because life is stressful nowadays. There's work pressure, there's complex family dynamics, there's uncertainty, crazy global events going on. So everyone is striving to find that inner peace. And one way to do that is through spending time in nature and also trying to access that sense of higher love that you speak about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of nature. Uh, of course, it's the feeling of awe and wonder itself, which
Yes.
is now a major topic in positive psychology. Keltner at Berkeley has done many, many studies on this, many of them funded by the Templeton Foundation over the last 25 years, because no one was thinking that they could actually study the power of those emotions and how they affect people's sense of well-being and security and happiness. We now have a lot of that science in place, and also gratitude. When you go into nature, it's so inspiring. Oftentimes, you
Yes.
just feel a natural sense of gratitude. I'm grateful for the beauty of this ocean. I'm grateful for the beauty of this desert plain. I'm grateful for it all, and I think that gratitude and awe are kind of precursors. I think they're emotional states that prepare us to be loving. They free us of these negative emotions like bitterness, hostility, rumination. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
uh, and suddenly all of that's in the rear view mirror, and you're able to come back to your inner being. So I take a ferry ride about every month. I'm on Long Island. Long Island makes me a little
Hmm.
bit claustrophobic
Yeah.
because it's an island, and I'm not an island guy. But
Yeah.
I take a ferry from the North Shore of Long Island over to Connecticut, Bridgeport, Connecticut, not to get off, but just to ride back and forth. It's about 3 hours. And I just keep my eyes on the waves, on the seagulls. I breathe deeply. I have a little exercise where I breathe in and imagine that I'm breathing in pure, unlimited love and then breathe it out. Uh, and it's all very easy to do in that environment. When you go to the meditational center in Port Jefferson, which is a neighboring town to Stony Brook, um, they have, wind chimes and they have, water pouring through a bamboo chute. And then if you go to some local church, if you happen to be Christian,
Mhm.
you'll probably see a statue of St. Francis of Assisi. But all these traditions recognize, whether you're talking about Muhammad or Jesus or the Buddha, they spent a lot of time on the hills in nature.
That's
Um,
true.
and, the Buddha gave his Sermon on the Mount in India, and Jesus gave his Sermon on the Mount in Jerusalem. And Muhammad gave many sermons from rural country settings. And I think that's there's something we can learn from that. So I do, in psychiatry now, we have a big psychiatry department, and people now speak about nature deficit disorder. It's interesting.
Nature deficit disorder.
Deficit disorder.
Oh.
Yeah, that these young kids who wind up in the psychiatric emergency clinic, oftentimes on the weekends, they have no connection with nature at all. And they just don't understand the value of, as they say, Mother Nature.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been to New York and you've been to
Yeah.
Central Park, right?
Yes, I have
So the guy
several
who
times.
designed
Yeah.
the guy who designed Central Park,
Yeah.
Olmsted, Frederick Olmsted,
Mm-hmm.
was the most famous landscape architect in American history. And he had schizophrenia. This is in the 1890s or so. And he was living at that time in McLean Asylum, which is in Boston. It's still an active clinical site for Harvard Medical School. And he was living there as a resident patient when he was still putting the finishing touches on Central Park. Because, as he said before he died, he wanted people in New York to be able to find inner peace by walking through that park
Mm-hmm.
and getting away from the craziness of it all. And, he was so correct. And you think about the amount of health and well-being that wonderful park has created for people's lives. given them a chance to get away from the world and to breathe deeply and to look inwardly, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it truly is. So spending time in nature, deep breathing, those are a couple of things that you
Yeah.
incorporate into your life. And another exercise that you write about in your book, which I find very interesting, is called a spiritual dress rehearsal, where
Oh,
you
yeah,
imagine the people you'll meet, and then you think about the kind of love that they might need in the moment that you
that's right.
meet them. That's really an interesting practice that you have there. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. I've been doing this honestly since I was 15, since I had that dream. And I like here at Stony Brook, I've been here 17, 18 years now. I run a center and I uh, chair a division of medicine in society that's kind of the social activist side of our huge medical community on Long Island. So I know the people I'm going to encounter every day. I have a book here, that gives me all the names of people I have to see over the course of the day. And I just take a glance at that in the evenings, usually before I go to bed, just to put it in my mind. When I get up in the morning, early in the morning, I get up at 5 or even 5:30 or 6 sometimes, but I've done that consistently uh, over the years. Drives my wife a little nuts sometimes because she'd like to sleep deep and long, and I just don't do that. It's not in
Yeah.
my DNA. But the reason I get up early in the morning is because many people, both from the early Jewish traditions, but also in the Islamic tradition, many great sages have said that the early morning is the best time to pray and to meditate. And that's because, first of all, the world hasn't invaded your peace. You get up out of bed
That's so true.
and, you get up you get up in the morning, right? Tell me if this
Yeah.
is true for you.
No,
You
absolutely. There's a stillness in the air, and it's just
yeah,
very calming. And
yeah.
um,
And it's beautiful. It's
yeah,
so
it
beautiful.
is. I agree. I'm a morning person, so I love the
Yeah.
energy in the morning.
Yeah. And what these great sages have said
Mm.
is that that's where you can get closest to the divine, whatever your definition might be. Um, because the divine is also beyond time and place. And if you look at Hinduism and the Upanishads, the supreme being is um, timeless and is, described in terms of freedom, creativity, and unlimited love. So that's the nature of the divine. And if you can, in the morning, in those peaceful places in life, uh, connect with that. Whatever your spiritual practice might be, and there are many of them, um, I think it's very important. So I do that for about half an hour, and then I imagine the people I know I'm going to encounter, and I have a lot of responsibilities. Some of them are very big responsibilities, and but that's what I do. I anticipate who I'm going to encounter and what form of love they need. Now, if I came into this set of offices here and all I could do is preach love, they'd probably send me to get a master's of divinity someplace and become a minister. Um,
Yeah.
but what I like to emphasize in the book, as you know, are the practical, everyday expressions of love that are not controversial and that everybody needs to utilize in leadership roles.
Hmm.
So compassion, whether it's with patients or with colleagues, um, carefrontation, which is a word I borrowed from a psychiatrist named M. Scott Peck. who once wrote a famous book called The Road
Yeah.
Less
No,
Traveled.
yes.
And he went to Case Western Medical School
Mm-hmm.
before I ever got there. But then after I got there, he realized that we were kindred spirits. And I have a whole thick file of letters between Scotty Peck and myself. He
Wow.
passed away.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know.
but one letter he wrote me, he said, I read about your discussions and your interest in love, but you've got to have something that can work um, when it's not so easy, and when people have to figure out who they are and make some changes.
Yeah.
And he said, why don't you use my word, because it's in his book, carefrontation.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I'm not the originator of that term. It's in The Road Less Traveled, but I
Yes.
have permission from Scotty to use it. And I use it a lot because it's better than confrontation. There's so much confrontation in the world.
Oh, a lot. Yes.
It's outrageous. And we just need to get away from that.
Mm,
Uh, People are primed for confrontation. They should be primed for carefrontation.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, because the world it can feel really impersonal and cold. And if people just can come from that compassionate place, that place of care, I mean, the whole energy of this planet would change.
It absolutely would. And that's where I think we're going. I think that there are enough people like you, like me, I guess,
Yeah.
there are enough people who are working on these things. And so
Mm,
eventually there's a tipping point,
yes.
and we need to get to that. But the expressions of love, carefrontation,
Mm,
compassion, celebration. We have a
hmm.
lot of birthday cakes out here in the hallway for anybody and everybody who's celebrating a birthday. And everybody gathers around, and we actually are forming a community that way.
Hmm.
Loyalty. It's hard to imagine love without loyalty.
Oh, yeah. Those go hand in hand.
They do. And there's so little loyalty in the world today in relationships that
Yeah.
psychiatry really worries about it, because many people have depression, fidgety relationships, insecurity, because nothing seems to hold.
Yeah, how did we get to that place? I often wonder about that.
Well, as I said, I've been married 43 years,
Yeah, and we
and
don't see that longevity
that's
in marriages
valuable.
anymore. Yeah, it's not,
No.
yeah, it's becoming rarer, unfortunately.
Yeah, but for me, it's really a test of commitment. I mean, you want to stick with people through
Yeah, it's a
some thick
mindset,
and
right? It's a
yeah, it's a
mindset you
mindset.
had. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's thick and thin, and my parents were married for a pretty long time
Yeah.
till they passed away. So it wasn't divorce wasn't in my mindset, if you will. Uh, but I feel that stability is so important. And once you get away from stability and loyalty in your relationships, it's hard to get it back.
Yeah.
It's hard to have the confidence to bring it back. So loyalty matters. Mirth. That's a funny one, right? Mirth is laughter. I use a lot of mirth. Always uplifting, never this sort of gallows humor that doctors sometimes are accused of, and rightly so, but always very uplifting,
Hmm.
sensitive, and just a little bit better than a silly dad joke. So, I might say to somebody, um, what do you do? They typically combine medicine and theology. So what do you do if you have dyslexia, insomnia, and you're
Yeah.
an agnostic? You're up all night wondering about the existence of dog. Dog being God spelled backwards.
Yes.
That's the
Yeah,
dyslexic
yeah,
side of it. Okay. Not everybody will get that.
yeah. Yeah,
But
I got it.
good. I knew you would, but I just thought I'd help out your audience.
Yeah, yeah. Thank
So,
you.
um, but I think that simple things.
Mm.
because laughter is so powerful. And another problem in our culture these days
Hmm.
is that we've forgotten how to laugh.
Yeah.
I mean, you read the newspapers, you look at what's going on,
Yeah.
certainly around the
There's
United
just so
States,
much
where
anger. There's so much anger.
so much anger. And 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 I just, you know, I just believe in laughter. And there was a guy who was the editor of the New York Review of Books. His name was Norman Cousins,
Okay.
and he wrote a great book called The Anatomy of an Illness. He was
Okay.
in a New York hospital. He had an autoimmune disease. No one could help him. And he got his doctor to let him out. He went home. And for a couple of months, he listened to comedy, TV comedy things, Candid Camera, The Three Stooges, silly stuff. But he liked it and made him laugh, and he got better. Now, whether this is scientific or not, I don't know, but he did become one of the founders of the field of psychoneuroimmunology. Long before there was an institute of that name at the National Institutes of Health
Hmm.
in Bethesda. And now nobody doubts the importance of how emotional states affect physical health. These negative emotions, the rumination, the bitterness, the hostility, the anger, they're okay in very short doses,
Yeah.
but if they're on in an extended fashion, in a protracted manner,
Hmm.
you get all kinds of long-term stress hormones building up in your body, and those stress hormones will cause vascular disease because they convert metabolites into fatty acids.
Yeah.
You will have slower wound healing by about 10%, non-controversial. And then this is also not controversial. These high levels of stress hormones affect the brain, and especially the hippocampus. And that's where memories get laid down, and you get hippocampal atrophy, which is one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. So, in a lot of ways, Alzheimer's disease is the disease of the age of anxiety. People are so anxious all the time. They're just living in stress. They're
Yeah.
bathing in these stress hormones, and it's not healthy at all, mentally or physically. And so that's another reason to get out into nature and just breathe deep. A good, positive, non-derisive, respectful use of humor is a way in a millisecond. It doesn't take any time. In a mere millisecond to turn away people from their negative emotional conditions into this kind of hilaritas. And I think that's vitally important. So mirth is an expression of love.
Laughter. Yeah.
Laughter is key. And at
That is.
UCLA, there's the Norman Cousins Psychoneuroimmunology Institute
Hmm.
in the medical school there. And it's
Yeah.
very, very famous. And they've studied for the last 50 years, they've studied the psychology and the biology
Hmm.
of laughter. There's a good reason why those non-human primates laugh like crazy. You know, uh, it's good for them.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the upcoming launch of my new book titled The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world, which highlights a profound yet often unexplored part of your identity that holds the key to everything from answering your biggest questions to finding deeper meaning and joy in everyday life. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or to buy a copy. So, how do we balance being in that state of joy, laughter, kindness with whatever we are exposed to in everyday life? Because we can't really bypass reality. Dr. Stephen, there are bad things happening in the world. We are going to be exposed to stress, toxicity in the world, toxic people. So how do we protect that part of us that can be connected to pure unlimited love and make a conscious decision to deal with the external realities that are almost always not ideal.
So you have to turn inward. You have to
Mm.
create an inward life, a
Yeah.
spiritual practice, and hopefully have some kind of a community that shares that practice with you. So, when I define love in the book, just without getting very metaphysical about it, when the security and well-being of another is as real to you as your own, and sometimes more so,
Hmm.
you love that person. And then there are all these expressions of love. But there's also this idea of pure, unlimited love.
Hmm.
And one of my friends here, a well-known family physician, I asked Jeff Trilling, who shows up in the book a little bit. I said, Jeff, he's a mystic. I said, Jeff, how do you think about pure, unlimited love? He's an interesting guy. And he paused and he said, pure, unlimited love is the first thing you see when you close your eyes for the last time, comma, hopefully. So it's really talking about something beyond human experience and even comprehension. Of course, we've actually done some really good papers on recalled experiences of death. And even the very secular New York Academy of Sciences allowed us to use their premises to do a whole day-long conference. And Sam Parnia, who's the head of resuscitation medicine at NYU Langone Hospital, is the guru on this. I was the second author. And that article, we got an award. It was the most highly cited article in the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences in 2023-22. And so but it was deeper than this sort of near-death experience kind of thing. And um, we used a lot of measures of positive psychology, not just did you see a light or did you feel a presence that was
Mm.
sublime, but also um, how did this affect you afterwards with regard to kindness, generosity, uh, gratitude, and so forth. And it was amazing just how people were transformed at these very fundamental human levels. So that's
Is
really
it
what pure
because
unlimited,
is it because they had access to that pure unlimited love, like they felt it,
they
and then
felt it.
they just needed to infuse their life with that from that point
Yeah,
on?
yeah, they had to be awakened to it.
They had to be awakened to it. Okay.
Yeah. And even if they didn't experience it, and not everybody did, they still had that transformation because somehow they really valued this as their second chance at life, if you will.
Sure.
Um, and they wanted to do better than they had, perhaps. So we have a lot of publications, and Pure Unlimited Love then gets very mystical and very spiritual in its orientation. And again, as my friend Jeff Trilling said, uh, it's what we'll see, hopefully.
Hmm.
I can't guarantee that for you, but hopefully, I do incline to think that it's true.
Yeah.
Uh, but the world is a mess, and you're
It is.
not going to find
I know.
uh, the solution from the cultures around us. Our cultures are so destructive.
Yeah.
I mean, American culture just, although my daughter would just disagree with me on this, to me, I think American culture is just destructive of human life, whether it's
Hmm.
through drug addiction or just violence and hatred and uh, racism, whatever it might be. There's just so much hatred out there. And
Yeah.
what we have to do is in our inner being, find that place to counteract it. And that's the same thing with raising kind children. In that chapter,
Hmm.
and we spent $3 million studying how to do this from the Institute. But one of the key things we've discovered is that when you have a family and your son or your daughter does something that's really distasteful, instead of losing it, screaming bloody murder, much less hitting them, remain scream free if possible, and have a place in your home where you have a statement of core values that the kids have contributed to and agreed to. And
Hmm.
just 7 or 8 simple words: kindness, forgiveness, gratitude, and so forth. Um, Helping others, volunteerism, just has something there, and gather around that. Could be on, taped on the refrigerator door,
Hmm.
and discuss what had occurred. Maybe someone had been really nasty about a neighbor, and suddenly we're talking about how I hate that person. So instead of telling them in a nasty way, don't go around hating people. You can sort of bring it into a conversation, and you create a culture and an agreement about this as part of your family world, and that can ward off the influences of the society around us. But there's just so much negativity,
Yeah.
and yet, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Dr. Steven, what if you do encounter people who don't really have the same values and aren't guided by such principles grounded in love and kindness and generosity? Because they're out there. I myself have encountered them quite frequently. And I mean, it's important to hold on to those things that make you the person that you are, but it can be hard sometimes, especially when that other person is operating from a place of, I don't know, cynicism, or they're just very cutthroat. It can be difficult to deal with people like that.
Oh, absolutely. Just realize they'll always be there.
Yeah, I mean, in the corporate world, you see so many of them.
And
I
you're
mean, it's a
almost,
reality we have to face. So, how do we
yeah.
operate from a place of kindness and love when other people are not doing that?
Well, I think I'm optimistic about this because, you know, um, at least in American culture, when they do surveys of kids who were 12 years old, called preteens,
Hmm.
and they ask them what motivates them in life, about a third of them say they want to help others. That's both optimistic and pessimistic.
Hmm.
Pessimistic. So 1/3 of them say they want to help others. 1/3 of them don't say that, but if they get involved in, say, service-based learning in the high schools, which is required, at age 14, um, they come around. If they have good mentors, if they're given choice about what they want to be doing that is beneficial to others, if they are able to tap into their own preferences, maybe something that they feel they can do well, or maybe they just want to do something completely different from what they typically do. But if you manage that experience well, and then also important, debrief. I've done all this for years. Let them debrief about their experiences. That 1/3 comes around, and they begin to realize it's good to be good, and they
Yeah.
take joy in it. But then there is a recalcitrant third, the ones you're talking about, and they just don't get it. Now, it may be the case that in midlife, they will realize the futility of their experience,
Hmm.
and they will have a big awakening, a big turnaround. That does happen, but it's not easy, and there's no simple formula for it.
Yeah.
But eventually, I think, I do think there is an internal soul that we all have that is connected, as you know from how I write, with this idea of universal consciousness and love. And even though it's repressed by ideas in our society, which corrupt it and overwhelm it, it's still there.
Yeah. We can
And
all
and it,
access it.
we can all access it, and for sure. So, we once did a paper here on widows and widowers who had been happily married for many years. Lo and behold, the ones who could self-report helping others during their period of grief and bereavement, having lost their soulmate, they got through grief and bereavement more quickly and also in a more lasting fashion. So this was published in a big psychology journal. And the New York Society of Widows and Widowers, if you've never heard of that, I'm not surprised. But anyway,
Yeah.
they gave me a call. I picked up the phone. They asked me to go into New York and give a talk. And I gave it. I went into New York, some big hotel in a ballroom. And I gave this presentation. I said, the thing about helping others is not that it's transactionally beneficial, but it's internally beneficial. You don't have
Mm.
to worry about payback, but the
Yeah.
science in terms of how this helps you inwardly, psychologically, in terms of finding meaning, but also biologically, that's pretty powerful nowadays. And we seem to be showing that in our study. So in the back of the room, when I finished, it was Q&A. There was a guy who was wildly raising his hands.
Oh, is he the one who said, I don't do nothing for nothing?
I don't do, yeah, he said, the way he said it,
Yeah.
because this was New York, he said, I don't do nothing for nothing.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's around.
Yeah.
But and it prevent, and I asked him,
It's
I
prevalent. This sort
it,
of thinking is prevalent.
it
Yeah.
is, and
Yeah.
and we have certain political leaders who emphasize it as
Right.
well.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so no mentions of names,
No,
but
don't mention.
it's not a good thing. And so I asked him
Yeah.
if he was happy. He said no. Have you ever been happy? No. And
Shocker.
then we talked about this for a little while, and I don't think I
Mm.
got too much progress with him, but I hope he remembered that experience. Maybe he did.
Hmm.
But one soul at a time. It's carefrontation. I mean, this will make you really laugh, but I have been known to go out into the street on 8th Avenue and 34th in Manhattan. And when I see somebody who is getting in an altercation, I can I can walk up to them and without getting smashed myself,
Oh, yeah. I
I will
was good.
say, yeah, I mean, I don't know. People just don't do that with me. I say, do you know, these are the words I use. Do you know that you are a miracle of the universe? And they're completely shocked.
Wow.
What are you saying? And I say, you're a miracle of the universe. And then I say, you are a wonder of creation. And it's so astonishing for them that they'll actually pause and we can have a conversation. And I think that it's true. I think that every person you're talking about who's sort of given up on goodness, every
Yeah.
one of them has a unique set of talents and of gifts. Our job is to sometimes remind them, if possible, of
Yeah.
that. Now, sometimes it won't work, but and you want to be prudent about these things, but a lot of times it will work if you're good at it.
Yeah.
That's carefrontation. That's why
That's
it's an art form.
beautiful. That's beautiful, but
Uh,
it's also brave.
Well, courage, I don't have courage as
It's a
an
brave
expression of
thing to
love.
do because you don't know. They might have a gun hidden there somewhere, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Um, but I just believe see, what happens is that people were told, maybe in schools, by
Mm,
somebody who should not actually have been a teacher, but somebody who told them they had no talent, they had no gifts, they weren't worth anything. So, do you know Thomas Edison came up with
hmm.
the light bulb?
Yeah.
He was from Ohio, from a town called Milan, Ohio, next to Oberlin, and about an hour outside of Cleveland.
Okay.
I lived in Cleveland for 20 years, and I used to go out to the Edison farm. And when he was 12 years old, they sent him home from school. This is a long time ago. They
Hmm.
sent him home from school with a message for his mother that Thomas can't do anything. He shouldn't be in school, and good luck. So his mother, who was a very spiritual woman, told Thomas, Thomas, I think you can be a light to the world, which he was. And she suggested that he go into the Red Barn, which is still there. This is a National Historic Site. Go into the Red Barn and just tinker with stuff, put stuff together, and be creative. And and that's what he did for the rest of his life. And he said, if you have 10,000 failures, that's all a success because you're learning what doesn't work. So that's the way his mind worked.
Yeah. Because he had that mentor in his mom, someone who believed in him.
Yeah, yes, someone who believed in him. And
Yeah.
and one of the important expressions of love. So in this office, I sometimes have very talented medical students who come in and they're feeling that they're good for nothing, they can't make it. Maybe they should go back to Queens and
Hmm.
work in a restaurant. They're brilliant, but they lose confidence and they have ideas for research that have usually been put down by somebody somewhere in this institution. This is a great institution. Um, I mean, someone might say, well, I want to study how we can be compassionate with very difficult patients. A lot of people would say, well, that's not something you can study scientifically. Yes, it is. So I always say yes. My rule here is to always say yes to the creativity of everybody. And as a result, this little center was awarded by Alpha Omega Alpha, which is the most prestigious medical award program in the country. In 2019, we were awarded the national prize for professional identity formation because so many
Hmm.
people regain confidence. And a lot of education, it teaches people how they can fit in, but not how they can be creative and realize their callings. So I want people to realize their callings. I guess my hand's up here. Okay. I want people to realize their callings. And I think everybody has a calling. The first chapter of the
Yeah,
book.
that's my favorite chapter, actually. May you follow your callings.
Yeah, yeah, because so what is
Yeah.
a calling? You know?
Yeah. How is it different from ego ambition, social
Oh,
conditioning, or
well,
just,
it's
fear disguises practicality?
yeah, it's an extension
Yeah.
of Give and Glow, which is the first chapter. May you give and
Mm.
glow.
Yeah.
And the helper's high and how exalted people feel about being able to use their talents to the benefit of others. And so having a calling just means that you've been able to figure out how you can live your life and have an economy based on the things that make you glow. And it's spiritual too. I mean, some people do, as I did when I was a kid. They have a sense of uh, destiny and eternity, and I've always been very, very much in that direction. But even setting that aside, putting that on the shelf, I also just feel and have felt since I was 14 that I was cut out to be a teacher. And so for the last, even at St. Paul's in New Hampshire, I would tutor the French Canadian kids across Pleasant Street. These were oftentimes from very poor families, and they were culturally confused because French Canadians always struggled to find their voice and their identity in American society. It's a little
Mm.
better now, but not that much better. And so I would go over there and I would to the Millville School. It's in the book, and I would teach them math and literature. And the woman who was the principal of the school, she just thought I had a gift, and I thought I had a gift too. So when I wasn't wandering around peripatetically, you know, reading reading scriptures and philosophies, I was over there at the Millville School, and I loved that. And the other thing was that just down the road on the other side of Pleasant Street, there was a Christian Science nursing home.
Hmm.
And Mary Baker Eddy had actually lived there long ago when she founded Christian Science. Then she went down to Boston and really got it going. But there was a Christian Science nursing home in this big, beautiful red building that was getting a little bit crusty. And I would go over there. I was a classical guitarist and lutenist. I even went to Cardiff, Wales when I was a 13-year-old to study lute with Julian Bream. So I was a pretty devoted lutenist,
Yeah.
and I would go over to that
Lutenist.
lute, yeah, like classical guitar, lute,
Okay.
yeah, and I loved that instrument, and I would go over to the nursing home with my lute, but I also had a classical guitar, and I would be playing pieces, and I'd sometimes sing with these people who had dementia, and that's how I got my interest in dementia. I've written a book uh, called Dignity for Deeply Forgetful People, how caregivers can meet the needs of people of Alzheimer's disease. But that all comes from earlier on, and I felt that calling, and it just became more solid as life went on. And that's why I don't even use the word dementia because I think it's like the word retard. You
Yeah.
don't hear it used, but dementia has that same negative ring. And even clinically, when people are talking about dementia, suddenly these very negative adversarial metaphors will come in. That person's just a husk, they're just a shell, they're not there, they're gone, they're dead, and so forth. And I use deeply forgetful because I think it allows people to notice
Yeah. Gives
these,
them some grace.
yes, yeah, grace, and lets them notice that
Yeah.
there's still creativity, there's still consciousness, there's still appreciation for nature. And if you really look, you can be open to surprises because people will come back with the right music or the right artistic stimulation, and they'll be a little bit more conversant and present than you ever imagined they could be.
Yeah.
So that's why Dignity for Deeply Forgetful People is one of my callings. And I've
Yeah.
been doing that for 30 years, traveled all over the United States and Canada and Europe talking about that. And now, I was surprised. We did a Gallup study of primary dementia caregivers, and half of them prefer to use the language of deep forgetfulness. Because, I'm deeply forgetful. When I go out behind this medical school, we have a big, huge garage. I mean, the garage is so big. It's got 5 floors and it's 200 yards long. And, if you can remember where you parked your car for that day, you get an A plus. And one day I couldn't remember where I parked my car. And there
Yeah.
was this very nice young medical student, and I asked her, "You don't have any idea where I parked my car?" And she said, "No." And then I said, "By the way, do you know if I even drove my car to work today?" She laughed. But we all have these moments.
Yeah,
We
we all
forget.
do. Even young people, you can have an episode of mental fog and
Yeah.
forget everything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, in Christianity, the
Yeah.
test of love is love of enemy. But
Hmm.
I don't have any enemies, by the way. I have lots of adversaries.
Yeah. Oh, that's a
And
much
I,
better
yeah,
term.
I don't use the word enemy. And
Yeah.
an adversary, I'm positive about my adversaries. I have a book in
Mm.
my briefcase here where I have a whole page listing major adversaries over the years.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for them
Wow.
because they're gifts into my life to bring out my best.
Mm.
I mean, even when I left Case Western, I had some adversaries.
Yeah.
I had a great experience there and did very well, but I had some adversaries
Hmm.
in high places and they weren't making it easy for me.
Yeah.
But I was able to overcome that. Of course, I got an opportunity to come to Stony Brook, and it was an offer I couldn't refuse. And I was going to lead my own programs,
Yeah.
which I wasn't doing in Ohio. But your adversaries are your best friends in a certain way.
They
Um,
absolutely are. Love thy enemy, as the saying goes.
yeah, yeah, and so that's important. Just realize that
Mm.
you're going to encounter. This is sort of in response to your earlier comment. You're
Hmm.
going to encounter very, very difficult, challenging, cynical, sardonic, nasty people. Um, even in your place of work, and they can be abusive. And my daughter worked for a company in New York, and she was doing really well. And she felt that she was abused by a very nasty uh, vice president who basically wanted to get her into bed. And
Ooh,
and
that's serious.
yeah, so she left that job.
Yeah.
I suggested that she sue the company, but she didn't want to do that. So
Mm.
she just left, and she works now out west and has her own company, and she's doing fine. But that person at first glance was just horrible, incorrigible, and destructive. But you know, it encouraged my daughter to dig deeply into her
Hmm.
spirituality and into her creative talents and gifts to find her callings.
Hmm.
And I think she's done that. And she would
I'm so
probably
glad
not
to
have
hear
done that.
that because
Yeah.
that can be
Oh,
traumatic, to
well, it
be
was
approached
traumatic.
such a way. Yeah.
It was traumatic,
Yeah.
but fortunately, um, it also brought out the best in her.
Yes.
Um, so when I started the Institute, you can imagine I was in a medical school. I
Hmm.
had R01 grants from the NIH to study Alzheimer's genetics, all
Hmm.
kinds of things. And when Sir John Templeton faxed me, you need to start an institute to study pure unlimited love. I faxed back, Sir John, as I mentioned, we could call it the Institute for Creative Altruism. He faxed back, no, I think unlimited love up to $8.9 million. And I faxed back immediately, Sir John, I love that language. It jumps right off the page. He
Hmm.
was in Nassau at the time. And, you, you know, he was never adversarial, but by viewing him as wise and insightful,
Hmm.
I created a program that's been able to engage all the spiritual traditions of the world very successfully. I mean, we had a
Yeah.
conference in Philadelphia with 800 people from 40 countries. A third of them were practitioners of love, however it's defined in their tradition. Uh, a third of them were scientists who studied this behavior from every different kind of perspective.
Hmm.
And a third of them were the sort of philosophers and theologians. And we stayed for a whole week at Villanova University, and it was a great experience.
Mm.
So,
That's great.
yeah. And so Sir John was correct. He was a great mentor. So
Yeah.
you're going to have mentors and you're going to have adversaries.
Adversaries. Yeah. And you know what? I'm so glad that Sir John sent you that fax because the work that you produced as a result of that, you starting the institute, has been such a light in the world. And I mean, it's so clear that whatever you teach about unlimited, the pure love, it's something you embody, it's something that you live. And I just want to express my thanks for creating a pathway and showing us how we can also do the same in our lives. And really, thank you for all the wisdom you've shared with us, your presence, and all the great work that you've been doing, and also the everyday acts of kindness that you show to people. This has been such a meaningful conversation.
Well, thank you so much, Celine. You bring it out of me, so you do a great job. Chagall said blue is the color of love, and the background in your room there is very, very uplifting.
Very
Very
soothing.
nice. Very
Thanks. I
soothing.
appreciate that feedback.
Yeah.
Also, I want to let our listeners know if something in this episode softened you, if it steadied you, I truly encourage you to pick up a copy of Dr. Stephen Post's book titled Pure Unlimited Love, Science and the Seven Paths to Inner Peace. It's the kind of book you don't just read once. I mean, you will keep returning to it for guidance at different points in your life. You can find it wherever books are sold and on Dr. Stephen's website, stephengpost.com. And remember, if this episode gave you something, please share it with someone who you think will benefit from it.